Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Development Corporation for Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. And I'm calling the Development Corporation first because we have some guests with us that I'd like to let them talk with us and then get on their way. And first item is privilege of the floor. And I would take privilege of the floor for both the Development Corporation and the IDA together. I have two blue cards. The first is from Teresa Alt, and I'd invite you up.
Is this working?
Yes, sounds like it.
Okay. The Meadow is seeking a pilot to support its 70 units, all with various affordable rents, some of them with supportive services. This is the kind of construction the city needs, whether to house those who are now homeless or to allow residents in danger of displacement to stay in the city, or to allow commuters to live in the city and walk to work. So indeed, approve it. Well, not yet, but send it to the next stage. Send it onward. Are tax abatements the best way to fund affordable housing? No. They lead to higher taxes for everyone else. This in a city where the biggest company, Cornell, does not pay taxes. A fairer way to get public funding for affordable housing would be to pay for it from taxes that are based on ability to pay. That is, state income taxes or other taxes that get unneeded money from the super rich. Bills have been introduced in Albany to do just that. A 09088 by Gallagher and S 08494 by Clear.
Thank you. And then I have another card from Tom Knipe.
Hi, everybody. Tom Knipe with the City of Ithaca. Thank you for having me. First, I'm here to listen to the discussion about the Block 14 project. The city's very supportive of that project, and we look forward to engaging with the county and TCDC and the LDC on the project. A couple of quick updates. Happy to report that the ski group, the Shared Kitchen Ithaca project, signed a letter of intent at 700 West Buffalo Street for the project after 5 or 6 rounds of back and forth and negotiation, mainly on rent, but we have an agreement, and we are imminently launching the soft and quiet phase of the capital campaign, and I expect that at least by the end of this year, if not earlier, the group will be able to meet the conditions of TCDC for release of the $150,000 in funds that you committed to support that project. So thank you for your patience and interest in the project. Happy to answer any questions about it. And second, I think Heather has already informed the group, but just to repeat that, we've been asked as staff by Common Council to give a report to Common Council on the CTAP program. Obviously, that's an IDA program that was developed in 20 years ago in coordination and collaboration with the City of Ithaca. So Council has identified as one of their legislative priorities for this year a review of that program. And we are starting with providing some very basic information so that everybody has the basic information. Heather has been extremely helpful in terms of developing content for the presentation, and will be there tonight. So thank you for that. And those are my updates. Thanks.
A couple, just, what was that acronym? SKI?
SKI. Shared Kitchen Ithaca. What do you think? Does it work?
Okay, I thought there was an H in there. I was thinking that's unfortunate. Okay, that's better. And that discussion will happen tonight?
Yes, tonight the Common Council meets, they have one of their study session meetings tonight at 6 o'clock. We're last on the agenda, so if you want to tune in, it probably won't be at 6.
Could be tomorrow morning.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a few different items on the Development Corporation agenda, but the principal one is the Block 14 discussion. And looking at the IDA agenda, we've got a pretty hefty line of things to do. I would say let's try to give ourselves maybe 20 minutes on Block 14, if that seems reasonable to everybody, to cover it. And we have some guests here with us. I guess I'd first say I'm not aware of any additions to the agenda for the Development Corporation. No? Anybody? Okay. Mac and Gary, would you like to come up and join us?
Prior to that, I should state I have a conflict or a potential appearance of a conflict as the chair of the LDC2 board, and as such, I will recuse myself.
Thank you, John. Yeah, come on. Yeah, welcome. And I understand you had a meeting with the City of Ithaca.
We did. Tom referenced it, and he was one of the members, along with the mayor and city manager and other city staff. Yeah, I think the bottom line of the meeting was we wanted to bring them up to speed on the project. They had been aware of it, obviously, but wanted to know more about what its status was, what our request was to the county IDA, and then just to talk more about it in general. Bottom line was a very strong positive interest in moving that project forward. They are, I think, investigating, I think just like the county has been, the best way to be involved, whether that would be as a member of the LDC board exactly, or as participants in some other format. That's being considered now. And then finally, we did talk about opportunities for funding, and they did go and they went back and talked about that among themselves. And the bottom line, my understanding is that at this point, they don't feel like they're able to offer any money on the table at this point, given that their budget season came and went, and there's not a pot of money set aside for this sort of thing at this point in time.
Yeah, I would assume a similar situation with the county, in that our budget is in full swing right now. So that would be pretty difficult to look there.
Right. I would refer to Tom. Tom, did I get that right, or is that a good, accurate portrayal of what you all?
Yeah, Gary, that was accurate, and I would just add that, you know, I can't think of any development project, whether it's a not-for-profit development project or a for-profit development project, where the city of Ithaca has allocated, you know, funding for pre-development costs. So it's definitely also, there's no real precedent for that kind of funding support, and that shouldn't be interpreted as a lack of support for the project. It's just from a budgetary standpoint, we don't have a framework to put that in.
Okay. Russ, you had indicated that the Development Corporation has more flexibility for this type of project rather than the IDA, which is more restricted. But I note the IDA has quite a bit more money. Money's good. Is that hard and fast, or would be?
The difference really is when we do something like this through the IDA, it has to be associated with a project, which is a term of art within the GML. So we could do it through the IDA if that's the preference. It's just a matter of there'd be more bells and whistles associated with it. We'd have to get invoices, pay those, and kind of come up with, you know, what the project is, which is the future development of the block. So I don't have a problem that it's tied to a project. As I think I stated last meeting, there's no bright line rule as to, you know, we can enter into a contract as the IDA and they can provide us a service, and that's okay, with the understanding that it's in furtherance of a larger project for the benefit of the city.
Okay.
And unfortunately, you can't just take IDA money and transfer it to the LDC. You can't do that indirectly, what you can't do directly.
Sure. Okay.
And then contrast that with the development corp, like how we can basically do anything we want in terms of the development corp?
Sure, the IDA is a statutorily formed public benefit corporation, whereas the LDC is a private, not-for-profit corporation, and the rules are different. There's a lot more flexibility as to what an LDC can do than an IDA. An LDC can't provide the tax incentives that the IDA does, but it can has more flexibility with whatever revenues it wants to use.
Okay. Ann?
So it sounds like, Russ, what you're saying is that, say, if there were funds to go to, you know, part of this project, that we wouldn't be giving money out, or we might be allocating money, but we'd have to reimburse. That's how the IDA would do it. Is something work would be done, it would be contracted for, it would be done, and then we would then allocate those funds at the billing, or part of it?
That's right. My recommendation would be, if it goes through the LDC or the IDA, that the invoices are submitted, to the appropriate entity, IDA or LDC, and then once received, so long as they fall within the parameters of what's approved, then they are reimbursed or we pay directly.
And if we went through that process, I mean, at this point, I'm you know, open to, obviously, to at least considering that. But if we went through that stream, I guess I'm wondering, so we would do a set amount, and then the invoices would come, and then so we'd have to vote on one part, or maybe we'll figure that out later. Like, if we did do that, we'd have to probably vote for the allocation and then vote again for disbursement?
You could. I would be comfortable if the LDC wants to approve the grant, if you will, up to whatever dollar amount, that we don't have to come back so long as the parameters are set in the contract, and when they were invoiced properly, we could just reimburse without coming back to the board.
Okay, so that would be an administrative part. Okay.
You would see it in the financials.
Okay.
And you know, the board can discuss it. If there's anything, you know, that's out of the project scope, if you will, that would have to come back to the board.
And if we didn't vote, that would possibly give more assurance that, okay, here's another vote, possibly by different members of the board if it runs into another year.
That's right.
So, okay, thank you for that information.
Sure. So mechanically, it sounds like we could look to either place. At this point, I guess I'd like to ask any of the IDA members, do you have questions regarding what is being requested? Does the memo that we received last time in the discussion fully explain what they're looking for of $90,000 of pre-development costs? Deborah.
Could someone remind me what they are planning to develop?
Say again?
What exactly are you planning to develop there?
Well, our hope is that we would...
Can you use the mic?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry?
The mic?
Microphone there.
Sorry. Our plan would be to work out a development that would include parking, hopefully for the county and the project. We would be doing borings to see how the site fits, just all the things you got to go through to get a site ready, the sort of planned unit development, the zoning, you know, I think allows up to 60, almost 65 feet. Housing is certainly, I think, a major option. I was reading that our population since the last census has gone up 8.9% in Ithaca. And if it's affordable or market rate or a blend is something that we would propose. I think we'd
Maybe I can just jump in here. Deb, I want to be really clear. We will not be the developers of the project. We will be seeking a developer who will do that. Our role in the pre-development phase is to get this to an RFP. And in that RFP, we will spell out things that we think that we want to see in a project. And that will be done in conjunction with our partners, including the county, including the city, most likely the DIA, to help us better understand, what should be in a project like that. But we've been very careful at this point not to say this is going to be X, because we're not sure yet. It will be, undoubtedly there will be a housing component to it.
Can I make a pitch here for workforce housing? Because what I'm seeing is, as evidenced by today's agenda, we've got more and more options for affordable housing, i.e. under 80% of AMI. And people above 120 to 150 have options, but people in the middle are getting squeezed out.
Yeah. I love that idea, and it's something I would think we would consider. I don't yet want to commit to anything because we still have to put that together. But that's a fascinating idea, and I would agree with you 100% that that's a missing piece of the housing puzzle here in our community. And we have not come up with good strategies to deal with it yet. So it could be that this might be one way to approach that.
And I think, Gary, we'd be coming back here with a final proposal that we would make to developers, right?
Well, the project, we will involve, the county will be engaged at probably the legislative level, because that's really how it's going to work, and to participate in that process in one way or the other. So you can certainly be assured that that will happen.
So the $90,000 would get us to answer the questions we'd need to present to a developer. So that's the ask, essentially, is...
Roll the dice.
Well, yeah, I could envision an outcome where we put in $90,000, they do the site analysis, you can't build there. And that would be the answer. And we would be out the 90. I think that's unlikely given the development that's happened around that property, but it's possible. So there is risk, absolutely.
I think that risk is less a concern than that we're just going to get more market rate housing.
That's possible too. Jeff and then Ann.
Ann, why don't you go first?
Thanks. I just wanted to say, as far as the discussions that we've had at the county level, I mean, it hasn't been extensive, but the conversations so far have been around wanting to get housing of various levels. And so and that's part of the reason we have leverage is because part of the property would be ours. So that's where we can help put the thumb on the scale. If the county agrees that that's where we want to push the lever.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ann.
Jeff.
Given our timing here, can I throw out an idea for the board to consider? I don't know if we want to vote on it today, that I would propose that the Development Corp, we structure it where it's a loan of $90,000 with if the site is then purchased, then our repayment could be repaid, or our loan could be repaid at that point, but it would give the option to the board at that time to say, do we want that 90 or do we want to forgive it at that time? I think it would depend on the health of the Development Corp and where we're at with funding. And then also, obviously, the possibility of going down a road where we're going to get incentive payments for someone at the IDA is going to come to us. So I would propose that. I like Russ's idea about having the invoices come to us, or not the board, but the administrative team for approval, and then we loan up to $90,000 at no interest.
Okay. Todd.
I like what Jeff said there. I'd be willing to second that if that goes to motion.
Okay. I had wanted to make sure everybody understood what the request was. I think we've moved beyond that. So it sounds like we're talking about, do we want to consider this? So, okay, Deborah.
I was just going to say, if that's a motion, I would second it, but Todd beat me to it.
Okay, Ann?
If we were to loan money, I don't see, but do you see some mechanism that could be repaid? Because this is the nonprofit LDC, you're not the landowners.
Right. The mechanism would be, I think, as Jeff talked about, would be when we put the property up for sale, we would make every effort to include the repayment of this as part of that purchase price.
Okay.
So now,
Okay.
we have to make sure, there's no guarantee that at the end of the day,
Right.
that will happen the way we want it. If everybody gets excited and says, oh, now we want the lowest possible affordable housing that costs the most, and we want to have a lot of other things that cost a lot of money, and the county wants to get the top dollar it possibly can, and all these things happen.
And you want to get repaid, yeah.
And you want to get repaid, that may not come to pass. Obviously, we know that, we're talking about that, and that's what we're all going to be working on as we go down the road. But as a framework, I mean, it seems to make sense.
I'll let Russ, our attorney, figure out the
just-
dynamics of that. You know, all you said,
No
I agree
pressure.
with, but we'll let Russ figure out
Just-
the protection of the IDA.
Just a couple quick questions, just so I'm understanding what may be put forth. Is a contract that's a loan, and there are certain conditions upon which the $90,000 or whatever the number is has to be repaid upon the occurrence of certain events, whether that's the hiring of a developer or the sale of the property or whatever that might be. We just need to know what the parameters are so we can document it accordingly.
I think we're
I had
talking
a quick
about
question for
the
you.
sale of the property.
Yeah, the sale of the property. Do you have an appraisal on it? Do you know what it's potentially worth?
Do we? We do not have appraisal on the whole property.
That's one of the things that I think we would be looking for, to show it to a developer.
Just to get back on track here, I'm going to treat that as a motion with Deborah seconding, and I'll take a turn.
Todd seconded it, I
Oh.
believe.
Yeah, that's
Right.
fine.
It doesn't matter. Okay. I had a couple thoughts. One is that at present, the LDC's only asset is the options. So we would be making a loan, just so we understand it, with really no security behind it, other than we have some confidence this project will proceed, and it has a pretty good likelihood that it would turn into a developable property. At that point, I would almost guarantee that whoever came in as a developer would be visiting with the IDA to get an incentive. So certainly the chance of repayment of the loan, if that was a condition that we insisted on, would be pretty, it's an odd situation in that I think we have very little security at this point, but we would gain it later on in the process if this whole thing is successful. Before going further, I wanted to ask Heather, do you have any thoughts you wanted to share?
I just wondered if you might clarify if invoices are to be paid upon receipt, what the eligible actions would be for payment. Would it be the expenses outlined in your request, or would it be more inclusive of some of the 10 pre-development items that you outline in your request?
You're looking at page 5 of the LDC.
Just a point of clarification, if we're going through the Development Corp, do we need to, are we still going to do a reimbursement? Because we discussed that we would need to do that for the IDA funds. Do we need to have that much administrative oversight?
I think Jeff's purpose in proposing a loan is that that gives us flexibility. We could always forgive the loan, or
But you still want to have, then it still would involve that
My
administration?
preference would be the
The motion.
invoices, still to have the invoices, and my preference would be invoices going forward.
Okay.
I think Heather, you're referencing past expenses. My thought would be future expenses that are incurred under the budget that they've proposed.
Okay.
Not to exceed 90.
Not to exceed $90,000 for our piece.
Add language around, all the tasks that need to be
That makes sense.
taken into
Right.
account. So if you had to negotiate for property disposition, which is listed here, we would include that kind of thing rather than miscellaneous LDC costs.
Okay, Deborah.
Yeah, Russ's quick down and dirty summary of how this deal is structured. Do we want to include something in there about possible, obviously there's triggers for repayment, but do we want to include anything about possible reasons why we would forgive the loan or circumstances under which?
Yeah, I think that should be spelled out in the agreements. The other thing that should be thought about is timing. So if we're really going to seek repayment of the loan and 2-3 years down the road, nothing's happened or it's stalled or whatever, what do we do? We would have the right to forgive the loan if you wanted to, and you'd have a piece of paper that there's nothing behind to collect on it. So I think there should be some time parameters as to, and maybe we can do it such that they give updates every quarter or whatever it might be as to the status and how it's progressing.
Well, I mean, remember too that the other option, being concerned about whether there's no security and how long this is going to take, the other option was we were just going to flat out give them the $90,000. So I don't think that we're worse off.
You could, I'm just putting this out there, you could encumber the property with a mortgage so long as all parties agree to it. I just don't know if the LDC wants to be in the business, and God forbid there's a catastrophic event.
No.
Well, and they don't own the property.
Well, somebody does.
Yeah.
They'd have to agree to a mortgage.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course.
A mortgage on their options, I don't think that works.
I don't know. Anyway.
Well, you'd have to get a mortgage on the fee, but yeah.
Let me propose something. It seems like we have an idea in principle that would be supported by the IDA. Would it be sensible to wait 1 month to allow stuff to be reduced to a writing?
Yes.
So that it's clear what we're agreeing to? Would 1 month's delay impede what you're trying to do, Gary and Mac?
Not if we could, if there's a sense that you want to move forward, we might want to try to move forward with some of these items and then pick them up. As opposed to, at this point, we're not making any expenditures till we have some sense of where we're going. So if you can have a sense that you'd want to, if you can make a decision you want to move forward, subject to the language being the way, getting the language, that would allow us to proceed.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we amend the motion to basically say we're directing our council to prepare a writing evidencing a loan of $90K under the conditions we've discussed.
Just one clarification, I'm sorry. You said IDA, or are we going to go?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Development Corporation, yeah.
Right.
And we can vote on that to give some assurance that this is what the individual board members are supporting.
Yeah, we can turn documents quickly. We certainly are within our right to share them with the board for review, and then next month come back.
So is that friendly? Yeah.
Is that friendly?
With you?
And Jeff?
Yeah, I think, Russ, to your point, I think what I heard is you'll share them documents before the meeting, so then we have time to comment, and then we would have a final document to vote on in the next meeting, which would be my preference.
Yeah, I would first share them with the board and the team, and then once you guys are signed off on them, I would then present them to.
So we would officially approve next month, but to give assurance to the LDC, we could vote today on giving that direction.
Right.
Does anybody else wish to be heard who hasn't spoken? I think you're the only one. Okay. Are we ready to vote? I'll call the roll. Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming in. This is exciting. And I guess we'll see you in a month.
Okay. Thanks very much, folks.
Okay. I do not have a chair's report for the Development Corporation. Heather, do you have any staff report?
Just that both the Tompkins County and the Cortland County legislatures approved the resolutions for the tax-exempt bond issuance for Cayuga Medical Center, and documents and closing are being prepared.
All right, and you've included the first quarter financial report. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, we have minutes from our April 10th, 2024 board meeting. Could I get a motion to put those on the floor? Todd moves, Deborah seconds. Questions or comments on the minutes? Ready to vote? Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, is there any other business to come before the Development Corporation? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved, seconded, and agreed. All right.
Did you get all that on?
We're going at speed. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for May 8th, 2024. Welcome to everybody. We have had privilege of the floor during the Development Corporation meeting, but if there's anybody who's come here who wishes to address the IDA, please step forward. Seeing nobody. Are there any additions to the agenda? I am not aware of any. John?
I think we should add an executive session to discuss a personnel matter to the end of the agenda.
Okay. All right. We can do that, and then we'll proceed to business. And we're going to reorder the business a little bit. Heather, how did you want to proceed with all this?
Carpenter Park first. I understand they have some time constraints.
Okay. And I believe we have some representatives from Carpenter Park. Is that online? Can you hear us okay?
Hi, yes, we can, Rich. Thank you, Rich, Heather, and members of the board. My name is Tim Crilly with Park Grove Realty. I'm also joined by Andy Bodewis. Apologize, we couldn't be there in person today. We do have a conflict, but I appreciate this matter being presented in front of the board again. I just wanted to give a brief introduction on the project and the development as a whole, the Cayuga Park development as a whole, and I'll try to make it very brief. For those of you who aren't familiar with the site, it was previously about a 10-acre site at the Cayuga Park outlet adjacent to Aldi's. It was one of the last remaining vacant parcels in the city of Ithaca. There were substantial development challenges with it, primarily NISAG easements and poor soil conditions. We've worked diligently probably the last 7 years on the project. There's 3 phases to the project. The first 2 phases have been completed. One is the 64,000 square foot medical office facility that was completed in October of 2023. It's substantially occupied by Cayuga Med. The other phase of the development was the 42-unit workforce housing building. That was completed in March of 2023. It's fully occupied and was fully leased in 3 months. In July of 2023, we were fully occupied. The last component in specific to our request today is the Aurora, which is a mixed-use building that will be built in the center of the site. I'm sure all of you have driven by this site. It's currently vacant. There has been a little bit of site work done there. And what will go there is two buildings with 16,000 square feet of commercial retail above 141 market rate apartments. The previous project did receive approval, and we actually closed on it with the IDA in December of 2021. We had full intentions of moving forward, and we actually did start site work at that period of time. And what really arose was significant headwinds from the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly construction cost increases. As a side note, we've seen construction cost increases on projects range from 25 to 40%. That, in combination with substantial interest rate increases from the Federal Reserve, really created an impediment to get the project done, as well as supply chain issues. So the poor economic environment that was thrust on us, as well as us needing DOT approval for break-in access on 5th Street, something which we couldn't move forward without it, really put us on hold for the project at the time. So we had all permits in place, closed with the IDA, started doing site work, COVID-19 hit, and we had not received a DOT permit to move forward with the break-in access. At that point in time, we spent a lot of time and resources really looking at the project and trying to find ways that we could make this thing financially feasible at the time, as well as responding to market conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we did was, we reduced some units from the building, and we removed an expensive parking deck to find a way that, we have a design that is something that we can move forward with. And we're here before you today. I think our request is really to extend the pilot term to be commensurate with the updated construction schedule. We're ready to, or we're going to get started on site work. We're going to get started within the next couple days. And we're proceeding under previous permits, and this is the last phase that we really want to knock out of the park. And appreciate any questions or comments on our request.
Okay. I guess for the benefit of several of the IDA members who were not here in 2021, I would just add this was a fairly complicated project, and it was 3 separate projects but considered together, and one being the affordable housing component next to Aldi's, and then the Cuga Medical Building. Having gone to both of the openings for both of those projects, I've been very impressed with the products that you put on the ground here. And personally, I'm very happy to see you back with the 3rd leg of this stool getting ready. Looking at the changes in construction cost, I understand why this has been a challenge, but I certainly think that we should really try to help make sure the last bit of this project does get done. I do have a little bit of concern that it's so different from what it was before. You've had to work so hard that it might be a situation where a public hearing would make sense. That wouldn't change my support necessarily, but we're looking at a fairly different project than it was in '21. I don't know if you wanted to respond to that, or we could hear from other IDA members.
Yeah, I can chime in on that, Rich. I appreciate that. I think, our view, and we feel very confident about this, is that, the project's substantially the same. The use hasn't changed. What we really did was eliminated some 3 and 2 bedrooms to be more commensurate with the impact post-COVID-19. There's less people wanting to live in 2 and 3 bedroom apartments now. More are favored towards studios and 1 beds. And we removed a costly parking deck to really get the numbers to make sense. I would argue that this is really the same project, and we're proceeding under the same permits that we had all along and approvals. So
Okay, well, let's get the sense of the IDA then. Deborah?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Tim on this. It's a downsized project, but it's still the same project. I just had one question about this that confused me when I was reading through this. The memo that Heather sent us said that the bank financing has decreased from 81 to 66% of project costs, and yet the mortgage amount has gone up pretty substantially. So I was wondering whether I was trying to compare apples and oranges. Did I miss something?
That's because the construction cost
spiraled. So it's a $60 million project instead of a $47 million project. So it's
Okay.
percentage of what?
All right. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
There is a substantially greater equity contribution here. John?
Yeah, and I will note, I mean, I just did the fast math, that this project is 16% fewer units, but 38% less gross floor area. I don't know if you're building like wildly smaller units or if that's all in the parking deck. If you could perhaps speak to that. That does sound, I mean, a 40% less building sounds like a pretty different project to me. And I mean, I hate to hold this up. I'd rather vote on it today, but I don't know if our policy provides any guidance on that.
Did you want to respond to that, Tim?
Yeah, the parking deck is essentially a whole entire floor. So, that's a significant portion of the reduction in square footage.
Well, and it's also the ratio too, that in addition, we've eliminated a lot of 3-bedroom units. And as Tim mentioned, we've seen over the last few years that people just really don't want to share apartments the way they used to. And the market is much more responsive to smaller studios and 1-bedrooms than it is to larger 2-bedroom and 3-bedrooms. So by and large, we've really shrunk down the number of 3-bedroom units. I think we maybe have 3 now, and we had 9 or 12 before, and we have more studios than we had before because that's where the market is. So that plays into it as well. But it is really the same project. It has the same commercial frontage across the whole frontage of the project. That's what was important to the city, and it was all part of the whole goal here was to have that commercial at the frontage on 13 and also be able to support the commercial and support the 65,000 feet of medical office with people coming in and out, as well as the employees and then the units above. So the intent and the whole really design is the same. It's just one floor less and some smaller unit types as opposed to the bigger unit types.
Okay, Ann.
Thank you for all this information, and wondering, I am concerned. I mean, you're saying that as far as the size of the apartments, I mean, I know just it's anecdotally, but I often hear that people are having a hard time finding 2- and 3-bedroom apartments. But my question is regarding the costs, the prices, the rents for the apartments. Can you please tell us what those are for the various sizes?
Yeah, I think when we looked at this and the way that we've always done our pro forma is, we want it to be under, the city centers, the Ithacans, and probably more in line with product like the ironwork. So I think, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but a studio I think is probably 1,800 to 2,000 depending on the size. 1-bedrooms probably 2,300.
The market rate.
Twos are probably high, probably 2,750.
But I mean, we have a lot of different unit sizes,
yeah,
right? So the floor plans aren't, there's a lot of different sizes, so it varies. And certainly we're in line with, as Tim mentioned, we're less than City Center on a square foot, less than Herald Square. With, I think, very comparable quality, and I think in some cases nicer amenities, but in line with where the market is right now.
Okay, so you were saying 1,800 to 2,000 for studio, 1 bedroom, 2,300, 2 bedroom, 2,750?
Yeah.
And 3 bedroom? Because you said you left in 2, 3 bedrooms?
3 bedrooms, my guess would be 3,200.
Okay.
If you could, can we have those sent to us? Because
I didn't mean that.
I'd like to know. Yeah.
If it's helpful at all, I looked at it when I did my analysis of the operating pro forma, and the rent, they look at it in terms of rent per square footage, usually when we look at all the downtown rents and compare them. So because some of the square footages, I think, increased a little bit, I looked at the dollars per square foot. So it was a range between $2.10 a square foot to about $3 per square foot prior, and now it's about $2.80 per square foot, all the way up to $4 per square foot, which when you compare those to the rents per square foot in City Center or Herald Square, they are higher than that.
These are higher than those projects, or those projects are higher than this one?
These are lower than those projects. Right. Thanks, John.
Okay. Todd?
I agree with John. I'd like to see this come back, I think. To see how the project changed. It didn't, I see what Deborah means about being like the same project, but it has changed substantially. I would like to have some better numbers in front of me.
I mean, it's interesting in that it really is the same project, but
Just smaller.
it is a bit smaller. The parking has changed. The equity contributed by the developers is substantially higher. And I think they had to do that to make this work, which shows a real commitment to getting it done. But yeah, anyway, John.
I actually don't want to see it come back. I was noting how substantially different it is, and wondering if our policy provides any guidance or whatever. I personally would rather see us resolve this and move on and let these guys get in the ground. Okay, hold on one second.
Yeah, Jeff. If I could just interject, guys, I want to say that, we're before you today. We want to get in the ground. We want to get this thing done as quickly as possible. The benefits as a percentage of cost have decreased from the last meeting we were at. We're not asking for significantly more resources or significant deviations.
It's more time.
We're just trying to get this thing done as quickly as possible.
And just to build off that, we appreciate everyone's time here. We've appreciated everyone's support from the beginning, but honestly, we've been at this for 7.5 years. We've cleared, I can't even tell you, innumerable amounts of hurdles. We've funded $320,000 in improvements for the Ithaca Community Gardens. We built 42 units of affordable housing that are fully leased. And we had 30% cost increases on that project. We've received no additional benefits from the state of New York, no additional resources to build it. It came out of our pocket to get it done. It's a very successful project. I say that not because I just want you to know we stand committed to this project. We stood by it from the beginning, but we'd really like to get it past this, get it moved forward. It is the same project on a smaller scale. We think it'll be an incredible addition to the city. This project being finished, and in particular, will really enhance the streetscape on 13. I think it's really important. We now have sort of, if you will, a tiger by the tail. We don't want to let it go. We need to keep this moving. It's been very hard to get to a number that works to allow this project to happen, and we're there now. And we'd really like to get it to proceed and finish this whole thing off.
Okay.
As Tim mentioned.
No, we hear you. We hear you.
So
okay.
we appreciate
Let me just make the rounds here so we keep this moving. Jeff.
So I'd be comfortable voting on the request today.
Okay, Duxon.
I would also be comfortable voting today, but I do have a question. I think you mentioned the break in access you felt was essential to the project, and I'm curious how, I'm on city council, and I remember these this issue well and how difficult it's been with NISDOT, but how are the negotiations going with them on that front?
Great question. Thank you, Duxon, because I know you've been close to it. We're done. We pressed hard for a long time to get this done, and the DOT's approved it. We have a work permit, and that work will be starting very soon. We've signed a contract with a contractor, and we will be enhancing 13. There will be a new light, traffic calming, sidewalks, all that's part of the work scope that that we will be doing in conjunction with Keiga Medical Center. So actually I appreciate you asking that, because those are additional community benefits and improvements that our project is paying for, and that will be starting soon as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Heather.
I did put together the background memo and tried to highlight all the changes in the project in addition to what the applicant provided, understanding that some of you were not here when this project was originally approved. Since I did that, there was some discussion with Russ, and Russ said, you might want to consider holding a public hearing. The estimated incentive has increased a little bit, not a huge amount, considering the cost of the project. But Russ, if you wanted to speak more to that.
I think best practices would dictate we have another public hearing. It's on 10 days notice, so we can get that scheduled very quickly so we don't hold them up. I think that's, given the scope and magnitude of this project, I think that's probably the best course, unless there's a huge push for them to get it done. So my suggestion would be today, accept the changes and authorize council and staff to set up the public hearing, and then we'd have to come back next month for the final approval.
Yeah, John.
I will note that, with the mortgage recording tax exemption, these guys can't close on their financing until they have our approval. It sounds like they're planning on actually starting construction in the coming days. My inclination would be, I hear you, and usually I'm going to be a stickler for process. But I also, having sat through many meetings hoping this project would happen, if it's not actually required by anything, I could see us perhaps passing on that. But I'd be curious if you feel like our policy provides a guide. Really what I was asking is, does our policy provide guidance? Is there anything that provides guidance that we must, or can we? It's not really a policy specific to the IDA, it's more what's required under the GML. And it's not a bright line rule. There's changes that have been made here. The project is smaller, the costs have gone up a little bit. So I'm comfortable advising the board that if you want to have the public hearing, go ahead. If you don't, that's also fine. It really should be driven by their timing, which John, you noted is tomorrow.
Okay, Ann.
I'm also comfortable voting today with the parameters, that they've asked for. And although it's smaller, I'm very grateful that the medical portion and the affordable housing was done, and that was done with, with the same proposal, the same size and everything. So although I'm a little disappointed that that this is part of the project is smaller, I understand. We've been hearing that costs are going crazy. So I'm okay voting today to go forward, so we don't hold them up.
Yeah, I don't want to hold this up. I appreciate that best practice would be to hold the hearing, but this has just gone on for so long.
Yeah, when we held the original hearing, you were required to give a general functional description of the project, which was done. And now if they were doubling the size or the acreage materially changed, it may be a different analysis, but they've reduced it.
Okay, it does sound like the sense of the board is that we're comfortable proceeding. I'm going to raise my hand, though, as a member of the board rather than the chair for a moment. I've sort of beaten a dead horse on what happened when Route 13 was built and opened around 1960, and it effectively bisected the city of Ithaca and separated it from the lake. The developments that have been moving forward on the north side of Route 13, creating new neighborhoods and connection to the lake, I just think are wonderful developments for what can be here in the city. At the same time I've talked about this, I've also tried to light some fires under pedestrian bridges, and while Duxon is sitting across the room from me, this seems like an opportunity to make sure that there's room in this area where this building is going to go for a pedestrian bridge. I know that there's talk about trying to do a boulevard style on Route 13, which would be good, certainly better than the run across at 3rd Street practice for the farmers market that's there now. But I think a bridge would be well-spent funds. Anyway, I just put it out there that hopefully we see that happen too.
Just get the county to pay for it.
Right. So if we're just full of, anyway.
I think we should ask the state.
Yeah, there you go. There's grant money for those things, and we really, I think, should be chasing them because that would enhance the buildings that this developer has done in a really significant way, and the farmers market and everything else that's happening finally on that side of Route 13. Could I get a motion to approve the project? I think that's Deborah moves, Duxon seconds. Any further discussion? John?
So at the risk of potentially throwing a little bit of a wrench in the works, for those of you that missed the first time around on this project, there was some substantial debate around our newly minted workforce housing policy at the time that this project was originally approved. And at the time, the argument was made that because the 3 projects included in this were sort of one project, we could count the housing units from the adjacent project as the developer's contribution to the workforce housing in the community. You'll note that this resulted in a great deal of debate at the Housing Committee, which ultimately caused us to change our housing policy twice. As it's currently written, those units would not count. They really are 3 separate projects. They have 3 different investor groups. They're performed by the same developer on adjacent parcels of land. But I am going to move to make an amendment that we require the payment of a $775,500 Community Housing Development Fund payment for the 141 units in this project, and I so move.
Is there a second? And seconds. Okay. I'm going to just provide a little bit more context that I thought the ship had sailed on this long ago, and
perhaps.
Thankfully so. We, for those who weren't on the IDA, we had lengthy and fairly intricate, not quite bitter, discussions on this specific issue, and the projects were approved giving credit for the building that they've put in the ground with affordable housing in our community. They've done what they said they were going to do, and in fact they've done it ahead of getting the benefit of the market rate portion. I would feel really uncomfortable changing the rules now. But John, go ahead.
I will point out, I mean, ultimately, yeah, the affordable housing project benefited from the policy that's now memorialized in our UTEP on affordable housing projects, which is a very generous incentive that's intended to make those projects stand on their own as financially viable projects. And we've seen project after project done that way. Really, the reason that a developer can get an exemption from making the payment by providing 20% units within their project is because they're giving up essentially rent on what would otherwise be market rate units in the project, whereas the adjacent project is conceptualized entirely as a financially separate, standalone, financially successful project, which is why we do not allow that under our current policy. So, I think we did spend a lot of time on this. I personally think we came to the wrong answer. I think, this is now a $7.4 million total incentive package. This is a piece of that. It's 1.2% of project costs. I think it would make a huge difference to see this much money go into the Community Housing Development Fund today.
Deborah.
As much as I support the Community Housing Development Fund, as much as I support and understand the need for additional affordable and market rate housing. I mean, you can listen to what I said at last night's meeting. I don't think you change the rules on a project like this just because you subsequently changed your policy. I mean, these guys basically have been screwed 6 ways from Sunday because of everything that's happened since COVID. You've seen the increase in their costs. You've seen how they've had to cut back on their project size. An additional $775,000 might seem like chump change compared to the cost of the entire project, but given what they've been dealing with and how they have to move forward and how they've had to cut their project, I think that you're just making it much more difficult to get this done by trying to enforce the new version of the housing policy. And I won't support it.
Hold on. Jeff?
Yeah, I would agree with Deborah. I wouldn't be comfortable voting to add another $700,000 to this project, given that all they've gone through. And I would note that the amount of benefit percentage actually is going down based on this new proposal. So I would not want us to change the game at this point.
Okay, Todd?
Yeah, I think I agree with Deborah and Jeff on that, too. I mean, I would be pushing for the 75% local labor language to be adopted, but I feel the same way.
Yeah, I know it's hard. It's hard. Anybody else want to be heard? Ann?
I'd like to make an amendment that it's a payment, what's on the floor is a payment of $100,000 to the Community Housing Development Fund versus the 700 and something.
Is there a second for that?
Yeah.
Hold on. Tim, hold on. Is there a second for that? Seeing no second, that motion does not proceed. Yeah. Any further discussion? Tim, you're very anxious to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think where we landed at the last meeting, in approval at the last meeting, I think it was in 2021, is we essentially stuck our necks out on the line to get Market View Apartments approved in the next funding round with New York State HCR, which we did, and we subsequently proceeded in this extraordinary economic circumstances. I mean, I know construction costs on the project went up 25%, interest rates went up 200%. We had to put all the money back into the project. So
yeah, that's recognized. Yeah.
And that in combination with the community garden, the Route 13 improvements, I mean, we're talking millions of dollars now that we've shoveled back to move this thing forward. So we'd very much appreciate if we could stay with the original approval.
Okay, well, let's get to a vote on that, unless anybody has anything more to say. Duxon.
I guess I'm on the fence. Just counting the room, it looks like there isn't support for John's amendment anyway. And I would probably need more time to digest such a major change. But again, it's all moot. I think the room has been read.
Okay. Anybody else? I'll call the roll. Duxon?
I'm sorry, what do we vote on? Are we voting on John?
On the amendment. On the amendment.
No.
Deborah?
No.
Jeff?
No.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
No.
And the chair votes no. So that does not carry. We're back to the main motion. This is the approval of the project.
Be relentless.
As amended.
Be relentless.
Are we ready to vote? I believe that was moved and seconded, so I'll call the roll on that. Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
No.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that carries. So congratulations. Please go get shovels in the ground.
Yeah, I drive by that every day.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right.
Take care.
Yes. Okay, let's keep moving. Heather, what project would you like to have us consider next?
We can go top of the agenda. The Knickerbocker Bed Company, local attorney Randy Marcus is here from Bousquet Holstein. Essentially, the IDA did approve and put in place a pilot through a leaseback agreement for Knickerbocker Bed Company. They own a 23.9 acre parcel of land. They've been approached by the town of Dryden to extend the Dryden Rail Trail and donate a portion of that land that's about 1.3 acres to the town of Dryden for that rail trail. So we would just need, the IDA would just need to amend the lease back. So that's what you're being asked to consider here today.
Okay. Randy, would you like to join us for a minute? I'm not sure we're going to have a lot of discussion on this, but
wouldn't imagine that there's much to be discussed. Heather explained the situation quite well, as I would usually expect, and it's really just a matter of moving forward with the donation of this sliver of property, free of the encumbrances that were created on account of the financing.
yeah, I'm going to monopolize the floor for a moment to say last fall, as part of a fundraiser for the History Center, we did a Traverse Tompkins thing, and I took it upon myself to run the old railroad bed from Cortland back, which was hard, but but it was just a great day because it's all there, and as the town of Dryden has methodically worked to reopen this, and the town of Ithaca have done it just a masterful job of building a rail trail. This is yet one more step in it. I applaud Knickerbocker for being a really good corporate citizen. And I tell you, if this thing can open, this piece here would effectively allow the trail to get almost all the way to Etna. And move from there. This is a really good thing. So I'm very happy that it's before us today. John.
Yeah, I mean, I've similarly ridden my bike and tried to navigate this particular corridor, and I will say that the connector across 13 with the bridge and across this particular property is one of the hardest parts to safely navigate. And being a regular user of the Black Diamond Trail, I can tell you that once you put these things together, the amount of use that occurs is profound. It reduces vehicle miles traveled. It improves community well-being, health and fitness in general. And I'm excited to support this. I would actually go ahead and just move.
Thank you.
Resolution.
Second.
Deborah seconds. Further discussion, Ann.
I just wanted to third it.
Okay. We'll take a third on that
How
one.
about a unanimous second? That would be good.
Todd.
I'll say, Randy, Knickerbocker's been fantastic since you guys stepped foot here. All the stuff you've done, you come through with the jobs, with the community, with the partnership around the community. You guys have been incredible. And you guys, textbook, how an IDA should work with a company and what you guys bring to the table. Thank you.
Todd, thanks for saying so. I'll be sure to pass that along to Richard Polvoy.
Okay.
And the training program.
Anything further? We ready to vote? So this is to approve the request to exclude this piece of property from the encumbered IDA piece. Duxon.
Enthusiastic, yes.
Deborah.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Ann.
Absolutely.
Todd. Yes. And the chair votes yes. Well,
Thank
great.
you very much.
Thanks for coming in, Randy.
Thank you again. I'll sit here if the next agenda item is still going to be the refi, in case any questions come up.
Okay. And this is the Ithacan. And let me just get through to.
So you do have a request from the applicant. They are converting from their construction mortgage to their permanent financing with HUD. This is the part of there were 10% set aside of affordable units in the Ithacan project, and HUD likes to have everything in a resolution, so you have a resolution in your packet with a request for a little bit of an increase in mortgage recording tax based on the cost of the mortgage. And I did send, and you have distributed today, a slight modification to the resolution. It was just cleaning up a $386 difference based on their April construction loan payment and their May payment before it converts to permanent financing. I think I got all that right.
And
Exactly, yes.
I would note here that the change in the request is stemming from substantially higher construction costs, and that led to more costs for materials and labor. Hopefully some of the material was purchased locally, but certainly local labor was used for that additional money. So I'm comfortable with this, but.
I didn't take that motion.
Right. So you'd move,
Second.
Deborah seconds. John?
Honestly, I'm a little confused. It sounds like this is effectively like a cash out refinance at the, right? It's like their construction loan was only 52,000 or 52 million. There's 57 million of the new loan. So they're essentially like that balance will refund to the developers effectively, right?
My understanding is it's covering a number of cost overruns, or unexpected increases in construction expense.
I mean, do we have some documentation of any of that, or?
Heather, have you had conversation with the developer?
I know that there were significant cost overruns, but I do not have anything detailing those overruns.
That was my understanding, but you're right. I don't know that I've seen anything in writing.
I mean, in general, I don't see any reason not to do this, but it feels kind of like we should probably see a little bit more on this rather than just, I mean. What's the sense of the IDA? Duxon?
Yeah, we just reviewed a project that gave pretty detailed numbers and changes in the project, and I would be more comfortable with that kind of information.
Okay.
Me too.
Dan?
Me too.
Okay, anybody else? Jeff? You're making head noises. I don't know what that means.
That's fine. I would accept that, what everyone else is saying, getting additional information.
Could I jump in for a second?
Sure,
and ask the board if there's any possibility of approving this request for the additional mortgage tax exemption conditioned upon receipt of some further documentation. The concern that lies behind my request is the fact that they're quite far along toward closing on this permanent financing, and they've targeted May 30th as a closing date, which has, there have been quite a few hurdles to get to that point.
What's the will of the IDA? Deborah?
I just want to point out that we're talking about $368 here.
No, we're talking about $12,000 in mortgage tax that we'd be forgiving on a nearly $5 million increase in
Well, but the
total
increase in
balance.
mortgage recording tax exemption is $368, according to Heather.
No, that was the change between what's in our agenda packet and the one that's
okay.
handed to us. But we are talking about $12,000.
right.
I would not think that they'd be pulling a fast one on us, that they didn't have increased construction costs to try to get $12,000. But I would be comfortable with the conditional agreement, but
I would agree. I would be comfortable voting on a conditional, so they can close on May 30th.
Anybody else want to be heard? Todd, you're okay with it? Yes? John, did you have more?
I mean, I'll grumble a bunch, but I'll probably vote for it anyway.
Good, okay. All right, so the motion would then be to pass the resolution conditionally upon receipt of confirmation that the increased mortgage is related to increased construction cost.
Documentation of increased construction costs exceeding $5 million.
Okay, Russ?
Just a logistical question. So they provide the board with the information that's being requested. justifying the cost increase, et cetera, we close in the interim and the board doesn't think that information is adequate, is the intent that they'd have to pay back or pay the state the $12,000?
I mean, could they just put it in escrow and?
I don't know the exact timing of when it has to be paid to the state, but when they record that mortgage, the tax either is going to be paid or it's going to be exempted.
But they could put
We can't, they can't close unless the bank is willing to, close and wait on recording their mortgage, because the tax is due when they record.
I don't see any realistic prospect that there'd be a closing without recording the mortgage immediately.
Right. So, and we can certainly incorporate that into the documents as amended, and that, if the information they've provided is insufficient, that upon the discretion of the board, it can be recaptured and paid to the state. Because remember, the local portion is going to be paid anyway.
I mean, can we
That's
just
probably
leave?
better.
Right.
Yeah. We'll recapture.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah,
Randy.
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
So just restate.
Yeah, I think the resolution as put forth says that, or will say that the board approves the increase of the mortgage recording tax exemption subject to receipt of materials justifying or substantiating the changes in the scope of the project and costs.
Okay.
But add the language that it's subject to the board's right to recapture if they fail to provide the documentation. I think that's the way it should read, Ina.
Okay, is that friendly to the mover and seconder? Yes. So that's what we'd be voting on. Is everybody ready to vote? Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John? Yes. Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so there.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Much
Good.
appreciated.
And we then have Meadow on Seneca. Is that correct?
We do. So we have with us Robert Kane, who's the Director of Real Estate Development for CSD Housing. I think Lauren Tegnander is here, the CEO of RSS. And Scott Whittam from Whittam Planning and Design locally. And I will let you introduce your other partner here with you, Robert. This is, an affordable housing project that is on the corner of North Meadow and Seneca Street. It does qualify under the affordable housing incentive that the IDA does have in its UTEP, our Uniform Tax Exemption Policy, as of today. And you do have in your packet a community benefits overview, the application, a project narrative, the incentive request, which does fit within the guidelines of the IDA's policy, as well as an organizational chart, which we tend to ask for with affordable housing projects, just so you can see all the different actors in play. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Rob Kane, Director of Real Estate Development with CSD Housing. We are a for-profit developer and developer consultants out of Rochester. We work in just about every region of the state, working with nonprofits like RSS and Lauren Tegnander.
Hi, I'm Lauren Tegnander. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Rehabilitation Support Services. We're a large not-for-profit mental health agency. We serve 17, almost 19 counties in the state of New York. We provide a variety of housing, clinical services, case management services, and vocational services to individuals.
And so with that, we've been working with Scott and Ife with Whittam Planning and Architecture to help us through the process. We all have various ties to the city of Ithaca and at large, so I'll pass it to Ife to talk a little bit about the project overview, and then we'll kind of go through who's doing what.
Good afternoon, my name is Ife Yang with Whittam Planning Design. I'm here today with my colleague Scott Whittam. I'm going to provide a brief project overview and then to my colleagues here. So our project is affordable and supportive housing located at 116 North Meadow at the intersection and Meadow and Seneca. And our project, Heather, if you could move to the second page, it might be a better image for that. So this project is a 5-story building project. The first floor consists of office for our management team, caregiving team, and also back parking, vehicle parking for our tenants. And from second floor to the fourth floor, there will be 70 units housing. 11 of them will be studio, 43 one-bedrooms, and 16 two-bedrooms. And the income for our tenants will be under 50%, 60%, and 80% of area medium income. And at the first floor, northeast corner of our building, will be a small welcome plaza that will have opening to Meadow and Seneca that will provide, a little space for people to gather and chat. And then the space will be provided with ample lighting and enough transparency from inside to outside to provide security to our residents here. And then on the second floor, on the back side of our second floor, it will have a small playground area for our tenants who have children in their units, and it will be surrounded by planters and screens to provide privacy and security. And on the fifth floor, it will be a small rooftop garden that will have a pergola and some planters, seatings that will just be a comfortable space for them to hang out during the day and night. And I will also talk about a little bit about the approval process. So this project has been approved by City of Ithaca Planning Board. It does not need to get any approval from BZA because it's fully compliant with code. And it was approved in February with some conditions that will be met during our drawing production and also construction period. And then I will pass it on to our colleague Rob and Lauren.
So as Ife had mentioned, we're going through the process since applying for site plan last year and securing neg deck for seeker, site plan approval. We've also secured operating funds, 2 operating fund sources, 1 capital fund source. We're under current review by the County Housing Development Fund. And also going into next month, OTDA will be reviewing at its board meeting one of the capital funding applications to continue moving the ball forward. Going into this summer, we will be applying to New York State Homes and Community Renewal for the final capital component of the application. If all goes to plan, which so far it has, we will be breaking ground early next year. And so part of that capital application to the state includes a couple different components from the city, 1 being a support letter, 2 being a pilot approval, and then 3 being any capital funding. So we're currently rounding out and securing all that going into next year. So if all goes well, the development will be prioritized at the state level to break ground in the earliest possible time. So with that, we've talked a little bit about ourselves, some about the development, our timeline and process. I'll turn it over to Lauren to talk a little bit about the operations, the level of services, what RSS is already doing in the community, and how they're expanding upon the great things they're doing here in Ithaca.
So currently in Tompkins County, we have a care manager that's working with a caseload of about 25 individuals. I'm sorry, it's actually increased to about 40 individuals at this point, linking them with any services that they may need and really just kind of acting as a central point in their lives to link them with medical services, mental health services, if they need housing, any other like transportation support services that they may need. We're also a recipient in collaboration with Catholic Charities of Cortland County to begin an SOS-CTI team, which is a street-level homeless outreach team here in Tompkins County. It's Tompkins, Tioga, and Cortland counties, where we will have clinicians, care managers, and peers out, boots on the ground, working with individuals who are street homeless, couch surfing, to link them up with any sort of housing. Here in the Meadow on Seneca, we will have staff on site working with individuals at a ratio of 7 seven individuals, bless you, to one on site to help them with any day-to-day needs that they may have. So they may be linking them out in the community, they may be providing transportation. Really, they're there to build a community within that building to help get services that they may need. Also, in the back half of the building, there will be another office for additional care managers through RSS, where we will actually, if somebody needs additional services, they can actually go down to that office and actually work with them. So we do want to bring a lot of support into that building to really help meet the needs of the community, make that building itself a community within itself, and just make sure that it's you know, a nice home for everybody that's there.
Thank you, Lauren. So talking about the operations, the importance of sustainability, ongoing operating costs, and providing renewable energies on site is important to the entire development team and from folks we've connected to in the community. So state-of-the-art technologies and heat pumps, you know, high thermal R-value type of U-value walls, R-value, low R-value windows. Also working through the LEED Gold plus Zero certification process. So, you know, operationally, this will be state-of-the-art in terms of technologies and efficiencies. But then the unique thing about RSS and the capital stack that we're putting together, it does allow for the level of care and the level of staffing that some other properties in town do not have. So that's the thing that we thought makes this property in particular unique. Moving into the necessity for the pilot request, it cannot only be accomplished with those services, but there will need to be a tax abatement to help on with ongoing affordability. So, you know, we're certainly very excited about the development. Folks that we've talked to in the community are really excited about the development. And I don't think there's anything else that we haven't already discussed that we'd like to just turn back over to the board here for further discussion.
Hey, thank you. John.
I'm going to let Deborah go first. It's close.
Okay, Deborah?
I keep going first. You do it.
Yeah, I guess we can argue over who's louder, you or me. Yeah, I want to thank you for this idea. It's fabulous, and I am very much relieved and gratified to hear that you plan to provide on-site care coordination and management, because we've had poor experiences with some other local properties that have tried to do what you're proposing to do. I was a little confused, and I guess this question is more for you, Heather. When you did your write-up for this, you indicated that there wouldn't be any long-term jobs created, but it sounds like there will be. So can you close the gap on that for me, please?
Sure. So generally, the job creation is done by the owner-occupied projects, which would be a manufacturer. For community development projects, there's other community benefits, and generally, the owner is not the same as the operator, so we sort of consider them indirect jobs rather than direct jobs by the owner.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that's generally going to be the case here. I mean, that was what we'd sort of talked about.
You're exactly right about that, yeah.
So could I get a basic idea of how many people that you will be employing, whether it's through the owner or the managing partner or whatever?
Through the ownership group, ongoing operations, property management, maintenance, care coordinators, they'll be arranged between 9.5 full-time staff equivalent to 12, based on how you're counting them, you know, based on how much leadership support there will be on the administration that's charged to the property.
Thank you.
So very well staffed, and that was some of the feedback we heard in our ongoing outreach of, you know, a lot of the supportive housing developments weren't staffed correctly, and you'd go there and witness it, and you see it, and you feel it. So we thought it was very important to do it right and to staff it the right way.
Thank you.
Hey, John, I think you're up.
Yeah, I just wanted to express some real enthusiasm about this project. These are the ones we really like to see, and I appreciate your approach to staffing it properly. One thing that I don't know if I missed in your presentation, but will the staff members be on site 24 hours a day, or are they only there during working hours, or like what's that?
Our 24 hours a day. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay, Todd?
Oh, yeah, so will your company own this project, or you're going to maintain, I mean, you're going to keep this project, right? It's
Yes.
not.
Yes.
Okay.
The organizational structure is a little bit complicated, but for folks that are practitioners in the affordable housing realm, it's pretty standard. It'll be it'll be an LLC to be created. RSS will be the sole managing member of the LLC to be created. And then when the tax credits are awarded from the state, those will be syndicated to a syndicator or a direct investor. They'll have a % ownership interest in the property, but by and large, title will be held by an HDFC, of which RSS will be appointing the officers and directors to, thus creating its 501c3 tax exemption. But RSS will own it indefinitely. We're in the business of 50-year plus ownership, and so I think that's very important for folks locally, for the state to be and have maintaining that continuity of ownership and mission throughout the property lifespan.
Thank you.
Okay. Ann and then Duxon.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really enthusiastic about this project, and on top of it, seeing the beautiful outside of the building, the common areas, the couple of places for common areas, the parking, and of course the affordability of it, and the location is great. One question, I also wanted to say, great to see too all the energy, exceeding the energy code and all I won't read them all, but all the different things that you're doing in there. So kudos and thank you for doing that. And wondered about charging infrastructure for electric vehicles.
Yeah, since it's LEED Gold plus 0 certified, I believe there's, don't quote me on this, 4 EV stations on site. It's like a metric. I think HCR has up to 4, 1 per every 20 units or something like that. So it's either 3 or 4 EV charging stations on site. We've been working with the fire department on the location of those. In the unlikely event anything catches fire, it's just you need to have trucking to kind of get in there, pull it out, and then if there's any safety issues with it. So the parking garage will include EV charging stations. And then part of the multimodal transportation option plan is that there'll be a 1-to-1 bicycle parking ratio on site, so folks can utilize their bicycles to then get around. We've been coordinating with the local transportation authority on trying to see if we can move a bus stop or station to the same side of the street. But in the worst case, you can't. It is very close to public transit, big reason why we selected a site to work on. It's literally on the other side of the street, the other opposite side. So within walking distance for folks that need transportation, options. And then on site with the care management piece of it, folks will be able to bring individuals to and from appointments, grocery, on site with staff vehicles. So utilizing a variety of different transportation options for folks inclusive of EV.
Excellent. And you said 1-to-1 for bicycles, so there'd be 1 bicycle spot for each resident?
That is correct. You can't quote me on that.
I can or can't?
You can, yes.
I can, okay. Wow, that's great.
For sure on the 1-to-1.
All right, so I can't come up, but I can't come up and
bicycles.
I'd have to defer to you for the EV.
Okay.
So thank you for thinking all of those things.
Duxon.
Yeah, I'm very enthusiastic as well, especially with the data you just gave. I'm curious. I have one question that's kind of a curiosity, and then another about outreach. So, looking at these example projects, will this be the single largest supportive housing project that RSS has in its portfolio? Like the next biggest I see is 50.
Yes. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
And then I had a kind of a broader question about what outreach looks like, and meaning, we had these people from the Vera Institute come last year to council and to some members of the county and talk about how difficult it can be to convince someone to accept help in housing, and that it can take multiple, sometimes dozens of contacts. And I don't know if you can speak to your approach for difficult clients like that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Actually, with our SOS CTI teams that I had talked about a little bit earlier, we do have one that's up and running in the Capital District in Albany, Saratoga, and Schenectady counties, and they all operate on the philosophy that you do have to engage a person on multiple times. The first time that you're reaching out to somebody is generally not going to build the rapport that you're looking for, and that level of trust that they need to say, okay, I'm going to give up what I know and what I've been comfortable with to move into something new. And in a lot of cases, you know, individuals feel like when they've moved into a variety of programs, there's a lot of stipulations that are placed on them. So our philosophy really is to have individuals move in and meet their needs with where they're at, and take our time with working with them and move slowly at their pace. So it's really important. It's not necessarily about like, hurry up, we've got to get you in, or now you're working with us, we have to, you know, you have to go based on our rules. We try to really be flexible and bring in those supports that somebody may need and adapt. So yeah.
Okay, Todd, did you have something?
Yeah, I noticed on the application, I'm labor guy here. I noticed the application is on the apprenticeship program, the prevailing wage on local labor, there's NA on all three of those.
Our understanding of the policy that the affordable housing is exempt from local labor utilization rate requirement.
But so you're not going to commit to any of it?
So it's technically non-applicable, but in every single development we work on with Krista Construction as general contractor, they make a tremendous effort on MWB outreach, on local utilization requirements. So they'll have ongoing meetings with labor unions, ongoing outreach meetings at job fairs. So it's something we actually hold them to in the AIA contract. It's something we believe in personally, very much wanting to try to utilize as much local folks as possible. So it's a good faith effort is the way we approach everything, and we kind of look at it more from like an ethos, but then from a formality perspective on applications, we kind of look at it logically. So.
Okay, because I know I get a argument with affordable housing on that. With you know, the way I approach it is if you attach apprentice language with some of these dollars and stuff, now you get a tool that these people who need the affordable housing or need this help can better themselves and learn a career and get off affordable housing. So trying to get that across to people.
I'm happy to, if you reach out to me one-on-one, I'm happy to connect you with our general contractor on, and honestly, they do a stand-up job at it, so.
And did you have more?
Yeah, just real quick, and possibly you're already aware of this, you know, we talked about connecting, and glad that Duxon brought this up about, you know, connecting with folks when they're possibly eligible to reside there. But if you, in case you don't know, we have Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services and the Continuum of Care that I'm sure would be really happy, and our Department of Social Services to assist you with their client bases and the resources they have here in connecting with people.
Yes, thank you. We've actually met with the Department of Social Services. We also you just mentioned two more that just went right out of my mouth. COC. The COC, we actually do sit on the COC. We have representation there, and we're an active participant there as well. So we've connected with all of those entities.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Deborah.
Just one more question. I noticed you said you only had one elevator tower. I assume you have multiple elevators in that one tower?
We have two stair towers and one elevator. It's kind of a combination between the need for residents, balancing costs, balancing the total code. Excuse me.
Well, let me just say that my concern is that you have 7 fully handicapped accessible units. If you're dependent on one elevator and those units are not on your first floor, you have a problem.
So the elevator, we use a backup generator so it stays fully operating. Life safety of all the buildings stays ongoing and operating. So the service repair of it, we'll have ongoing services for it. We'll have to talk to the architect, but where we fell on it was more of a code based on ADA requirements, based on building code, and the state's building requirements as well. So that's where ultimately we fell on. You know, I do hear you on the social piece of sometimes elevators
break.
Yeah. So you know, this elevator is actually it's a really expensive one. And
expensive things break too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, it's part of the, you know, a lot of times folks don't really keep up with ongoing service repair needs, and you know, it's you'll be speaking to local labor and local servicing. It's something that we believe in on just making sure it stays up with over time, and then having alternative routes based on what codes we have to work with.
John.
I'd like to move to accept the application and send this public hearing. I believe that's what we're doing now, right?
Yeah, you make the motion. Could I get a second? Ann seconds. I was hoping to take a turn. Just, I noticed on page 14, you're not asking for a sales tax or mortgage recording tax incentive.
Yep, so our understanding of state law is that because of the HTFC, the nonprofit status within the organizational chart, we do not, we're exempt all the way through for mortgage sales tax, and then also for, mortgage recording tax and local sales tax.
Okay. And the only other comment I had is page 39 of our packet. I appreciated you putting that list together. This is easy. I'm kidding. The number of steps you have to get through to get to a done building, it's remarkable. But it does look like you've made tremendous amounts of progress since you started in February of 23. And this is, I think, a really good project. So I'm certainly supportive. Does anybody want to speak before we put the vote to send it to public hearing? I'll call the vote. Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll go to public hearing and we'll see you after that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. I do not have a chair's report. I believe we've covered all our business. Heather, staff report?
Okay, you have in your packet the first quarter financial report. If there's any questions on that. You heard from Tom Knipe and from me as well about the CTEP presentation at the City of Ithaca tonight. It is my understanding that they want to review the relevancy and adequacy of CTEP and may want to make some changes or eliminate the program altogether. I think Tom said this as well, there won't be discussion or any action items at tonight's meeting. But I did, provide the information for you. I will be there. I think Jennifer Tavares might be there as well. Speaking of Jennifer Tavares, the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce has, for about a year now, been hosting a housing task force with stakeholders from a cross-sector of organizations and representation around the housing landscape, and they are just getting ready to put together or to publish, I think, for the county some recommendations about increasing housing supply in the community. One set of the recommendations is to look at CTAP and look at other kinds of tax incentives to support more housing development. So I wanted everyone to be aware when those recommendations are made public. I will go ahead and forward them on to this group.
Just a question. Is there a alternate proposal coming from the city, or are they just thinking of not having CTAP?
That I will be part of their discussion.
Okay. John?
If they were to eliminate CTAP, that wouldn't preclude us from continuing to issue tax abatements, or really would just no longer have the specific guidelines that we've used to indicate municipal support in the past, correct? I mean, we still could keep doing what we're doing.
The IDA, I always say this, and the IDA has the authority to identify what it wants to abate taxes for or provide incentive for, a whole range that provide a whole range of community benefits within its uniform tax exemption policy. It does not need the approval of taxing jurisdictions. However, in our community for over 20 years, it's really been the city that has said, we want investment downtown, can you work with us to put together an incentive program that works. So I think it's been a long and fruitful relationship, so much so that the city trusted the IDA back in 2020, 2021. They eliminated the sort of two-step approval process. So I think I guess I could say I think it might be important for common council members to maybe hear from the IDA about the if you think that this program is worthy of continuance or things that they might want to be thinking about at some point.
Duxon. Oh.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I was going to make the same point, actually, that the board or individuals, well, first let me say, like, there's 11 of us. I can't predict how we're going to handle this, but I do think that it would be helpful for the board to articulate the value of the city's endorsement. And I'm going to make the case that if we eliminate it completely, we will have less of a say in the projects that IDA prioritizes. So, but it'd be good to hear from everyone on that too. And also to come up, maybe, if the winds are blowing in a certain direction, to come up with a contingency plan to how to prioritize things in the absence of a city policy. Although I just said I can't predict, but I'm kind of feeling like it's unlikely we would get rid of it completely given the desire for guidance, to provide guidance to the IDA, but that said, it might be helpful.
I agree. It's been really helpful to have that guidance. So, Deborah.
So in the unlikely event that the city eliminated it entirely, and I can't imagine why they would do that, could we not adopt our own policy on the IDA prioritize?
The IDA does have its own CTAP policy. You know, I guess words matter. The city talks about it being their policy. It's the IDA's policy that was heavily guided by the city. But it is actually in the IDA's uniform tax exemption policy. It is the IDA's policy.
Well, further to that, if I could just say, last night, Pierre St. Perez, he came to the legislature meeting, and one of the points that he made, because he was talking about, you know, policies to address the housing problems in the city, was that we have a larger housing problem in Tompkins County, and the city is not the only place that can be developing affordable and workforce housing. So I guess I'd put a plug in if the city, whether the city eliminates CTAP or not, that this board ought to consider perhaps a broader policy to promote the development of housing in Tompkins County, because there are other places besides the city, by the way.
All true. Jeff.
So help me understand, why would the city eliminate this? Does it cost them money? Or I'm just trying to understand what the reasoning would be, why to eliminate this.
Duxon might be better able to answer that question.
There's you know, as someone who has gone door to door multiple times, despite Rich's efforts at educating the public through his writing, there is deep skepticism of tax abatements and the assumption that projects would break ground even without it. So, you know, it's politically unpopular, and there are a bunch of new members who are enthusiastic about revisiting it.
So I have done my best to provide information to Tom. Tom was tasked with giving that presentation on a program that the Tompkins County IDA runs. And so, you know, if you tune in, you will notice some of the slides look familiar, but really highlighting some of the community benefits and increase in tax base as a result of this program over the past 24 years. A couple of other things, some related to that housing. Ina and I have started doing some background research on what other IDAs are doing in terms of their standard pilots, and in particular looking at what they're doing in terms of housing to support housing in their respective communities. So probably not June, but maybe July, you'll receive a full overview and presentation on that. I've reached out to all the stalled projects as a result of the conversation at the IDA last month, you know, about, you know, is there anything that the IDA might be able to do to ensure that construction might start this year? I'm still waiting to hear back on any thoughts that anyone might have, that I've reached out to. A couple of the projects have confirmed for me that they're really, like, financially, even with a little additional assistance from the IDA, financially, they're not anywhere near viable right now. So just putting that out there and letting you know that, I did do that due diligence. I expect to hear back from City Harbor. They're really trying to make this project work. So they may come back with some recommendations.
How far back were these projects approved?
Like 2020-ish.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everything
They're
that's
facing
sort
the
of,
same mess we saw with,
yeah. Everything that's sort of stalled has been, COVID or thereafter. So I did do that, and there might be some follow-up there. The jobs report, we've put it together, started reaching out to anyone who hasn't met those job creation goals or where it seems like construction might be stalled, anything like that. And I'll be reporting back after I've had meetings with any of those projects. Moving forward, the conference center, I know Suzanne Smith-Jablonski reached out to me from there wanting to set up some tours of the conference center. So as soon as I have some dates from her, I'll go ahead and forward them. Has anyone here seen it? Me neither, so, okay.
She came to the legislature last night. They did a big dog and pony show and said that tours would be starting soon, so
yeah,
you might.
So that was probably part of that. And then, let's see, finally, I have received all the application materials for the Southworks project, and having looked at our agenda for this month, decided in conversation with Jeff Gorski that we were going to go ahead and preserve pretty much the entire June meeting to have presentations from Southworks, understand their application, what they're asking for. It is a little bit more voluminous than what you generally see. It's a much larger project. My goal is to get all the application materials out to you the end of the week or Monday at the very latest. So you'll have more than a month, or at least a month to sort of review and digest and maybe ask questions if you feel the need, or put them on paper for that meeting in June. And that's my report. If anyone has questions on anything I've reported on today.
Okay, good. We have minutes from April 10th, 2024. Could I get a motion? Ann moves, John seconds. Questions or comments on the minutes? Ready to vote? Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. That's approved. We had a addition to the agenda. Is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss a personnel issue? Todd moves, John seconds. Discussion? Ready to vote? Duxon?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we'll recess and continue. I do not anticipate the IDA will take any action after coming out of executive session.